Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I'd like to talk about 3 ways to improve your sex life for gay men. In my daily work with clients as a gay men's specialist therapist for 29 years now, in 2021, AASECT, AASECT, the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, Certified Sex Therapist, as well as an LGBT affirmative gay men specialist coach, author, speaker, and consultant, one of the most important and frequent questions I get in how to help gay male couples is how to improve their sex lives. And it's a fair question for me as a sex therapist, although that's not all I do. I work helping gay male individuals and couples on many of life's challenges. But it seems to be very common for gay men to want something more in their sex lives, whether single or partnered or married. It's one of the more frequent life challenges that clients bring to me. Recently, I was working with several couples in the same week on their goal of improving their sex life, and I realized that the guidance that I was giving each of them really boils down to 3 main areas of focus. These are 1, communication, 2, negotiation, and 3, experimentation, in very concrete behavioral, real-world terms. So let's look at each of these more closely. Number 1, communication. I have a joke that I use in session a lot. The older I get, the stronger my opinions get. And this is because time after time, with client after client, I see the same patterns of what goes wrong that flips people out and what generally helps them to get back on track. Communication is one of these. With it, you can do a lot toward effecting positive change and all the rewards that that brings. Without it, you're stuck in a dysfunctional communication pattern and these circles that keep the person or the couple frustrated month after month or even year after year. So perhaps the number 1 task in couples therapy, and more specifically sex therapy, is communication. So this communication about getting your own sexual needs met starts with communicating those needs to yourself. Giving yourself time to reflect and posing even some difficult questions to yourself is key. What do you really want? Is the way that you're expressing yourself sexually the way you want to be expressing yourself sexually? If not, why not? What do you want to see happen for yourself sexually that isn't currently happening? What do you want to start, or stop, or change to make it better? Would this involve what you're doing yourself, such as regarding masturbation and the use of porn or the use of erotica, other stimuli, or your partner, or someone else, or a group of people? These are all important considerations because if we didn't validate our own sexual feelings, we could just, attempt to fake it and pretend to be straight and enjoy all kinds of heterosexual privilege in society. But it doesn't work that way. We have to be true to ourselves about our own sexual orientation and self-validate that as gay men, and then we take it further by self-validating what we like or don't like with the options of gay male sexual expression, which are really pretty wide. After you self-reflect and you're clear on what you're thinking and feeling internally, it's time to share those thoughts and feelings, usually with your partner, or in the case of polyamory, with the rest of your polycule. And as difficult as it might sound, you might have to press through the social anxiety that might be associated with sitting your partner or partners down and telling him or them what's going on with you. I have another episode on don't ignore the hard stuff, because sometimes things that are hard or difficult for us to go through, like to speak up for our feelings, is actually a very important and necessary thing to do. having to bring up what is essentially a complaint about your sex life might not be something easy or something they want to hear, but you have to be careful not to abandon yourself or invalidate your feelings because of your fear of your partner's reaction. Now, he has a right to ask questions to clarify how to understand you. He has a right to state his own thoughts and feelings in reaction or response. He has a right to negotiate whatever changes you're proposing. But you do have the right to bring up the topics that are important to you, because just that, they are important to you. You don't have to be, or they don't have to be important to anyone else to legitimize them. What you feel is enough to warrant conversation and to ask for your partner's meaningful response, not to be ignored or denigrated or dismissed. So just like you would want from him, you want to approach him with what John Gottman, the couples researcher, calls the soft start. Starting with compassion or even empathy to speak to your partner, but also honesty by stating how or why your sexual needs aren't being met. You're giving permission for your partner to do the same. And you engage in a dialogue and say, what do we have here? Let's talk about what's going on. And while that conversation, is not necessarily fun in the life of a couple, it can be productive and frank and honest and compassionate and ultimately effective. It's a lot better than just ignoring the issue like the elephant in the room. So in couples therapy and sex therapy, I try to encourage clients to form their expression in the form of a request that you're making of your partner. Making it a game. On Jeopardy in America on TV, the rule of the game is you have to answer in the form of a question. So if the clue is he was the first president of the United States, you say, who is George Washington? Not just George Washington. And that's a rule of the game. Well, pretend that it's a game in this. You have to phrase what you want in the form of a request. What are you asking your partner to stop doing, or to start doing, or to change about the approach to your sex life? Are you asking him to experiment with a different sexual act, or sexual position, or some kind of an approach, like being more dominant, or being more submissive, or being more romantic, or taking your time? Are you asking to change top-bottom roles? Are you asking to move things differently on the vanilla versus kink spectrum, or on the sporty spectrum versus the intimate spectrum? Are you asking for your partner's permission to have him do something to you, or you do something to him, or somehow involve others in any of those? What are your hopes and fears about the change or the changes that you're asking for? So processing through conversation your hopes, the advantages, versus your fears, the possible negative outcomes of any behavioral changes, can help both of you to feel confident and empowered and pragmatic. The experiments with change might or might not yield good results, but you never know until you try. Susan Jeffers, PhD, wrote a really good self-help book, and it was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I love that title because so often we have to remind ourselves that we can't just wait until it feels comfortable to do something. On opening night of a play, that curtain is going up, whether or not the actor feels he needs another week of rehearsal or not. The show must go on. It's the same with sucking it up and braving through the tough conversations with your partner, as in life partner, spouse, or even a hookup or a casual sex partner. You have to speak up for what you want, or you don't tend to get it. You don't wait until you have absolutely no butterflies in your stomach before you speak up. Speak up, and while you might wish it were more comfortable to do that, it's more important that you just get to it and talk about it. That's part of validating your own needs and not self-abandoning by declaring your needs must always, just wait for another time. Baloney. Speak up even if you're not 100% comfortable, even if you're it doesn't feel 100% confident yet, if you know it's a discussion that pertains to your needs. So number 2 is negotiation. So the second part to this process, which is about moving toward getting your sexual needs met, is negotiation. In a good relationship, especially with gay men, because they're the dynamics of two grown men, and there's no patriarchal male dominance over women, which happens way too often, like at all, in straight relationships. Whatever happens because two equal parties are negotiating what's going to happen from a place of equal footing. So no one is the boss of anybody else because they have more money, or because they're older, or they have more social position or influence, or they have class privilege, or race privilege, or appearance privilege. Relationships are the great equalizer that way. Only in dysfunctional relationships is one partner's view the boss or dominant over the other partner. So when you consider the changes you've been wanting to try in your sex life, negotiate those with your partner. Speak up and make suggestions. You can phrase it with something like, how about if we try this and this? And then fill in the blank with the sexual activity that you want to try. Give your partner something to say yes to. It's easier to just agree with the suggestion that's presented to him than it is to mount an argument back. So you're taking the initiative and asserting what you'd like to see happen is likely to work, just because people are lazy, and it's easier to just comply and say, oh, okay, let's try that, and then there you go, that you're on your way. Of course, if your partner doesn't want to try something sexual that you want to try because it's possibly triggering for them from past abuse or a bad experience in a previous relationship, or because it's out of their own value system of what they find comfortable or pleasurable, or even their dignity or cleanliness or something, such as certain kink play, then, you have to respect their wishes. You don't want to violate or re-traumatize somebody who's been through something rough in their past, particularly a sexual trauma or sexual assault. But the fact remains that if it's something you want to experience, then you have to negotiate how you might be able to experience it and still let your partner be relieved by not having to. And this is where open relationships or consensual non-monogamy can be really helpful. I've worked with a number of client couples where one partner was into BDSM play and the other wasn't. And so the BDSM play was outsourced to another party or parties, while the rest of the original relationship, including the rest of their sex life, which was kind of vanilla, that remained intact. And that really worked for them. A negotiation can include a predetermined trial period, so it's seen as an experiment that's time limited and less of the burden of a permanent change that can feel like it's too high stakes and scary. A negotiation can be a rather formal experiment, such as, setting a time and place for trying your first three-way, like on an upcoming vacation or a friend visit. Or maybe it's a time and a place for visiting a group sex venue, like a bathhouse or a sex club or a group sex scene. A negotiation can be an exchange of expression of your respective hopes and fears. What are your hopes and fears? What are his hopes and fears? And a discussion of the rationale for doing something. I'd like to try this because, or a rationale against it. I don't want to try that, and here's why. And you have that communication like we talked about above. That's part of the negotiation, is what are the arguments for and against experimenting with any particular act. What's also important in negotiation is that each partner has a chance to express their feelings, to ask questions of their partner, to give the background and the history and the rationale, and perhaps make suggestions on modifying the proposal. So where you go from there depends a lot on the experiment approach, such as maybe you limit the experience, or you limit the people involved, or the time frame. Oh, let's just go to this event for an hour and then we reassess whether or not we want to leave. Then having a discussion afterward about how everything felt in the experiment. And this is something that organizations might do in what was called continuous quality improvement. They might do that at a hospital, they might do that at a company. I did this when I was in nonprofit organization management, and continuous quality improvement is doing something, evaluating and discussing it, implementing changes, trying those changes, then evaluating the changes so that you are continuous, that's the C in CQI, you're continuously improving the quality of what you're going through by way of experimentation and then review. So that's that last part, the third part, experimentation. And as a therapist, I would say that the experimentation phase is quite possibly the hardest of the three among communication, negotiation, and experimentation. The reason I say that is that while both partners in a relationship or more partners in a polycule might have a lot of discussion about making changes in your sex life, you really, trust me on this, do not know how you're going to feel about those changes until you do the previously mentioned experimentation as a result of communication and negotiation. Unfortunately, projective prediction of how each of you is going to feel is notoriously unreliable. And when I work with couples or polycules on this, you can easily have these, oh, wait, that doesn't feel like I thought it would moments, for better or for worse. And I've seen a lot of swapping of feelings. The person who wanted to open the relationship doesn't want to after doing it sometimes, and the partner who was reluctant at first is now totally into it. And it just sucks that our predictive capacities aren't better skilled and predicting, with more accuracy, but it's just a reality. That's why going into times of change should be seen as experimentation, with the idea that you can discuss and review and evaluate and then renegotiate after you've conducted some real-life experiments in vivo terms, so that you've really taken the theoretical into the experiential. And after you've experimented with something new, such as having kink play or consensual non-monogamy or your first three-way or your first time swapping top-bottom roles, or it could be anything, pick a time to really sit down and review it afterward, like a while afterward, not necessarily, the very next day. And, think about questions for each other. What worked for you, for each of you? What didn't work for each of you? What were you surprised by in the experience? What happened just as you predicted? Where were your predictive powers right? And did the change or experiment satisfy the need that you were going for? And if so, to what degree did it satisfy the need you were going for? What would have needed to happen in the experience for it to be better? Which variable, such as the time or the place or the people involved, would need to change to make it better? What about the timing of it, or the duration of how long it lasted, or even the intensity of the experience? And then based on that experience, are you more likely or less likely to try it again? How do you reconcile if you and your partner's experiences about this experience differ? What are some options the two or more of you can devise for bridging that gap? It's okay to feel embarrassed or silly or surprised that you feel differently from what you might have expected or predicted that you would feel. There's no shame in learning those, because that's how people grow. Discussion and evaluation after any experiment is an important part of the scientific method, and something that didn't work for one of you now might work differently under a different circumstance, or with different people involved, or at a different time in your life or in your relationship. Maybe there's an aspect to all this that need some attention in individual or couples therapy first. Maybe this experience is uncovering something important that you need to explore as a person that individual therapy can help you with, or maybe it's exposing a dynamic in your relationship about trust or communication or the influence of your past on your present, and that's something that needs to be brought into the couples therapy situation. So, putting it all together, having a better sex life and being more fulfilled physically, emotionally, even socially starts with your cultivating the ability to reflect and identify and express your own feelings about your own relationship to your body and how you want your body and your mind and your spirit to relate to others with one partner or more than one partner. It also starts with asserting certain inherent rights, human rights that you have, such as you're allowed to enjoy yourself in relation to others who are consenting adults, and to have sexual experiences that allow for what we call the 6 principles of sexual health. There's a previous episode on the 6 principles of sexual health as applied to gay men. I encourage you to listen to that. You can also read the blog version of that article on gaytherapyla.com/blog, and we get into what each of those 6 principles of sexual health are. But you have a right to sex that falls into those categories that are kind of legally and ethically and socially and personally meaningful. Unfortunately, getting your needs met is not something that can be done just by thinking about it or by keeping it private in the world of fantasy. It has to be shared with your partner and perhaps others. Justin Lehmiller, who I talk about a lot in his book, Tell Me What You Want, was about his really groundbreaking research with 4,000 subjects of all different kinds of people, gay, straight, genders, a lot of diversity, that talked about sexual fantasy. And it was so enlightening because it really is validating that the sexual fantasies you might have are very likely shared with many, many others across the world. And people who talked about their sexual fantasies, such as couples, generally reported higher levels of satisfaction in their relationship. So it's important to identify your fantasies and your desires and to share them. And it's brought from the merely theoretical or the hypothetical or the fantasy to the 3-dimensional brick and mortar real world in order to be fairly evaluated. But, if prior experiences in your life, such as negative or traumatic times for you, or events for you, or very entrenched feelings about yourself, like low self-esteem and insecurities, or overwhelming anxieties or fears stop you from really accessing the sexual part of yourself, then it's time to get help with each of those. You deserve to enjoy this lifetime, and getting your sexual needs met throughout your lifespan, young, middle-aged, elderly, whatever, is one part of quality of life, and it's part of the existential meaning that life has at any age, especially when you put that in the context of a minority stress such as gay men. As a sexual minority, we deal with stress in our lifetimes that other people don't, that have heterosexual privilege or other kinds of privilege. So if you need that kind of specific help, please consider therapy or coaching services. You're not alone in having multiple or even conflicting feelings, and the help that my associates and I provide at Gay Therapy LA can help you feel less isolated. And to talk about these things in a private, secured online setting, I'll be opening my office after the COVID pandemic once we have better numbers in Southern California and Los Angeles and West Hollywood. But for right now, everybody's on Zoom, even the local guys. And, at Gay Therapy LA, my associates and I, we're people who get it, as your fellow gay men, but also as trained professionals in a very specific area of gay men's lives, that of their relationships and their sexuality, in addition to all the other kind of psychiatric and psychological and social challenges that a gay man can have that we also help with. So we offer a lot of services. If you're interested in those, please send me a text or call. In the United States, area code 310-339-5778. That's 310-339-5778. Or you can email ken@gaytherapyla.com for more information on the range of services that we provide. Also, I'd like to give a special appeal. If you're enjoying the podcast series, and many of you are emailing me or texting me and saying that you are, and I appreciate hearing that so much, and I'd love to hear more. I would love to ask for you to review the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, to share it in some way with your gay male friends, because we want to help as many people as possible by doing this. And also, if you have ideas for topics that I haven't covered yet in the other episodes, but you'd like to see me address, just let me know, and I'll try to build an episode or a blog article or both around that topic, because this is here for you and for me to connect with you. Some of you can just do the podcast, and then if you want to become paying clients, which of course helps me to do this, and to, put food on the table, you're certainly welcome to, and I'd certainly welcome the business, and I'd welcome the opportunity to help you. So just let me know your thoughts on any of that, and your likes and reviews are very much appreciated to spread the good word. So thanks. And I will see you next time.